The time is 7 o'clock. I will call the August 19th, 2026 meeting of the Whitley County Planning Commission to order. I'd ask that everybody please stand and face the flag, and we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have a roll call, please, Brent?
Yes, sir. Travis Baker.
Here.
Stacy Petrovas.
Here.
Dane Drew.
Here.
Brent Emmerich.
Here.
Jack Green.
Here.
Tim Longaball. Mark Johnson.
Here.
Kim Kurt-Sessler.
Here.
Joe Wolf.
Yeah.
And John Woodmansey.
Here. Thank you. Looks like everybody's here this evening. We were presented the July 15th minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look those over?
I'll move to approve minutes for July 15th, 2026.
I'll second it. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? May we have a roll call vote, please, Brent?
Travis Baker.
Aye.
Stacy Petrovas.
Aye.
Dane Drew.
Abstain.
Brent Emmerich.
Aye.
Jack Green.
Aye.
Tim Longaball. Mark Johnson.
Aye.
Kim Kurt-Sessler.
Aye.
Joe Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is an oath of witnesses. We will have a public hearing this evening, and if you plan to speak, we do ask that you would stand and take an oath. So I will turn that process over to our legal counsel, please.
You would please, if you plan on speaking tonight, if you would please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that any statements you make before them? It's easier, if you're not sure, I would just go ahead and do it, otherwise we'll just read. Do you swear or affirm that any statements you make before the commission tonight will be the truth? If so, state I do.
Ready, thank you. Seeing no old business, we will move right into new business. Items, as I understand it, 1 and 2 are going to be continued for a later meeting. So we will move right into item number 3. That is 26W Subdivision 10 for Brad Locke. That is a 1-lot subdivision, approximately at 2900 West, 700 North. So I'll turn the floor over to Nathan for a staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, 26W SUBD 10 is a primary plat for a 1-lot subdivision to be called Lots Cove, located on 700 North, about 750 feet west of Brown Road, near Loon Lake. Currently, the area of the plat itself is unimproved. The overall parent tract has an existing home on it. What is being proposed is to split this parcel off in order to create one new building site. There is sewer located on 700 North. It's my understanding from the health department that that will be connected to. So we're using the sewer standards of the zoning code. As you can see there in the table, that means a minimum of 10,000 square foot lot, 70 foot lot width, and so on. However, if by chance that sewer is not available for connection, which is Tri-Lakes sewer district's call, then it still would meet the requirements for being on SEPT to 80,000 square feet and 225 feet wide minimums. Note that this does not have any dedicated right-of-way shown on it right now, and that is a deficiency with the plat. Even netting out that dedicated right-of-way, you still will be above that minimum 80,000 square feet. So, but other than that, you can see the zoning code minimums are met either way. So reference materials here, highlighted in blue is the subject tract. As I said, Brown Road is off to the east and Loon Lake is over here, 700 across center of the screen. Closer view. The proposed plat, if this was square, it would be just about as basic as we can get, but it's a little bit more trapezoidal. And as I said, the future right-of-way does need to be dedicated with this, which will change the lot area. The proposed lot overlaid on top of the aerial for good reference. I believe that this northeast corner matches the northwest corner of the adjacent property, which is not owned by the petitioner, but I believe that's their intent. If it isn't exact, it's pretty darn close. So proposed conditions, number one being standard for minor plats. Number two, because it's my understanding that the sewer can be connected to, but on the off chance it can't be, this is the requirement for 2 septic sites if need be. The 35-foot wide right-of-way along 700 needs to be dedicated. Building line needs to be adjusted. The subdivision code does require, it actually requires 20 feet, and we interpret that to be 10 and 10. Utility and drainage easements along the perimeter of the platted lot, unless there's other designs proposed. Otherwise, it's just a standard 10-foot drainage and utility easement. And then the deeds of dedication, signature blocks, and other texts that are on the page do need to be revised to be consistent with the Whitley County language. That's very boilerplate language. I have no worries about getting that taken care of as part of the secondary plat. So that's why I'm proposing it as simply a condition to be taken care of with the final printing of the Mylar. So with that, any questions for me?
Thank you, Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make the podium available to the petitioner or a representative of the petitioner to explain the project and answer any questions. And before you get started, I'll just ask that anyone that speaks this evening begins by stating their name and address.
Okay, I'm Brad Locke. I'm at 3000 West, 700 North. Basically what you see is what I'm looking for. Do you have any questions for me? The driveway for the easement will be on the far west line over there. That's the only thing that isn't really on there. That's where I plan on putting it. The building site is kind of directly in the center of that. And the plan is to hook to the Tri-Lakes Sewer District.
Any questions, Planning Commission? I don't hear any.
All good? Okay.
All righty, thank you. Floor is now open for public comment on this petition. Anyone may speak for or against. Public comment is closed. Planning Commission, the floor is yours.
I move to approve 26 West Subdivision 10 with recommendations of staff.
Second.
Alrighty, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hey, we have a roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Travis Baker.
Aye.
Stacy Petrobas.
Aye.
Dane Drew.
Aye.
Jack Green.
Aye.
Tim Longabaugh. Mark Johnson.
Aye.
Kim Kurtzessler.
Aye.
Joe Wolf.
Aye.
Brent Emmerich.
Aye. That motion passes. Moving on to item number 4 under old business, 26W Subdivision 11, Trevor and Nicole Moser, 1-lot subdivision to be named Steel Oasis. That's at 4718 North, 250 West. May we have a staff report, please, Nick?
Thank you, Mr. President. So going to slides here. I will say that we did receive a request for continuance, not from the applicant, but from one of the property owners. Because of the nature of that, we're letting you know that there is a request for continuance, and that will be your discretion. I'm prepared to present the staff report if you wish. If you want to consider the continuance first, I leave that up to you. What's your pleasure?
What was cited as the reason for the request?
Brent, refresh my memory on that one.
It was just a request due to a divorce situation that she had asked for a continuance. Yeah, and yeah, if that person would like, if you'd like to hear from them, I guess that would be up to you guys.
You can always do the normal process, do the public hearing, and then consider continuance as normal as well.
That's what we're going to do. Please have the staff report, Nathan.
Can do. Thank you for bearing with that. So this is 26W SUBD 11s to be named one lot plat to be named Steel Oasis. Address is 4718 North 250 West. Improved with a residence, which is currently used as a short-term rental that was placed there about 3 years ago, if I recall correctly, 3 or 4 years ago. What is being proposed is to split the ownership of that residence as well as surrounding 3 acres from the balance of the parent tract. Platting is required due to previous splits. This is the first platted lot from the 2018 parcel, so no rezoning is required. As mentioned, as mentioned, this is 3 acres, 1 lot plat. This does include dedicated right-of-way. It is on septic. It does meet the minimum 80,000 square feet. Lot width and frontage are both exceeded, as you can see there on the chart. The overall tract is fairly substantial, as you can see here. This is the corner that the lot is actually to be placed in. This is the proposed plat overlaid on the aerial. The residence, short-term rental, Airbnb if you wish, is located here. It's very wooded throughout. Being that this was basically an already developed site, there weren't very many comments received from reviewing agencies, and the only non-standard comment that staff has is the notation that owner names may need to be revised because, again, as Brent said, this is a divorce pending situation, so with that, names sometimes change. So it's more of a reminder for us than a real condition for you guys to worry about, but it's a reminder for us to check and make sure the names are accurate when that comes through. And I believe soil tests were already done as well, so that's not on here. Health department's already satisfied. So with that, any questions for me?
Thank you, Nathan. The podium is available to the petitioner or a representative of the petitioner. Please state your name and address.
Will Green with Walker & Associates at 112 West Van Buren in Columbia City. We were contacted to split off 3 acres, which is what we did with the dedicated right-of-way. The lot ends up being 2.55 acres. It meets all county requirements, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
I don't hear any questions, so all right. Thank you. This time the floor is open to anyone in the public. You may speak for or against this petition, please.
Good evening. I'm Scott Woodrow, 4792 North, 250 West. I own the land adjacent to what we were discussing here today. My question is the continuance that you mentioned. What does that involve? Until this gets resolved through the divorce?
The request is to actually not take final action until next month. That's what a continuance is.
Oh, will we be notified on that?
This would be your, if they do opt to continue, this would be your notification. The next meeting is September 16th.
Okay, so to be clarified on this, this is just to get this piece into her name from the divorce.
I can't speak to the basis for why it's being split, but that would be an effect. Yes.
Okay. Our concern is another house being built there with all my neighbors around it. Because of what happened with this Airbnb, it got snuck in on us. I was told it was going to be a she shack, and it didn't turn out to be that way. And most of my neighbors are very concerned about what the development's going to be further down the road for this parcel that's going to affect our properties. That's why I stopped here tonight to find out what was going on. And if there's a continuance with this information, you guys will notify us again.
We can.
If it's worth our time. I'm just trying to get clarification here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else for or against?
Hello, my name is Nicole Moser, and my address is 5720 East, 500 North, Churubusco, Indiana. I'm the one that requested for this to be continued. First of all, I just found out tonight that the plot is 2.55 acres. In the divorce decree, it's supposed to be 3 acres, not 2.55. Also, on top of that, this divorce went into effect April 10th with a payout of over $600,000 that's supposed to go to me. We have gone through multiple appeals. His lawyer went as far as saying the payout that's coming to me is not something that is usually seen in court, that it's actually unusual. So because of that, we are appealing this on further, and it could take 6 to 9 months. I asked if I could have my payout, and then if I'm owed anything on top of that, to deal with that then. But with how courts work, you can't do it that way. On top of that, when I built this 4 years ago, it was presented that I separate this out. And at the time, my ex did not want to spend the $3,000 to separate it out. So I find it interesting that he didn't want to then, but now he's wanting to push this before he's even paid me out on it. So I think somewhere was mentioned in there that it was for leverage. This is not leverage. This is simply because he has a court order judgment on him that he has not paid out. And that's all I have to say.
So if we continue this till September, will that make any difference at all?
It won't, no. He didn't come to me to present me with any of this information. He worked with Walkers. He decided on the 2.55. In the court order, it says 3 acres. And then he's the one that applied for the meeting. So none of this was presented to me until this.
It says that to clarify the 3 versus 2.5, the area of the plat is 3. The dedicated right-of-way, though, is taken off of that. So, and the lot area then is 2.55. So right-of-way plus lot area equals that 3. And that is how we deal with it. When you deal with a plat, you have dedicated right-of-way. So that's the difference.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
Liz, can we legally do anything with this, or do we need to wait until the divorce is finalized?
I mean, legally you can, but if there's an objection to the substance of the plat without having Mr. Moser here, oh, you were? Okay, sorry. Yeah, we might want to hear from Mr. Moser about it, but I do know that there's been some motions filed in the divorce to deal with this issue, so if you were inclined, you could wait until there's further orders in the court.
Okay.
But There were orders from the court to split this 3 acres off.
Correct. There were orders. Yes.
So are we?
Well,
I
let's
think
just,
we need to hear.
yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
if,
Unless
what changes if we wait till the 16th, we do a continuance? What's the difference then than there is now? Help me understand.
the fact that no payment has been made on this at all, and that's going to be like a 6 to 9 month process. And so he's already done a quick deed on the house so that's in his name. And this has been 4 months of no payments. And he's going to say it's because I keep holding it out. It's because of the form of payment that he's trying to do it in. That legal counsel has suggested that it's not, that it should be appealed.
So if we make a continuance on this, how does that help you?
I'm just saying that you guys are approving something before any kind of release of judgment is even happening. That's all.
That's what I need to know.
That's all. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this would just be approving the plat. It wouldn't be transferring what you guys do would not transfer ownership or deal with anything like that.
Yeah. And I'll remind you too, while he's walking up, keep in mind that this is the primary plat. Secondary plat, which is actually what gets recorded, is yet to come. And there's at least 2-year period that the primary plat is in effect. So that the secondary plat can still come back through. So if you approve this tonight, they would have until August 19th of 2028 to get the secondary plat recorded.
Okay, go ahead.
Trevor Moser, 4741 North Etna Road, Columbia City, Indiana, 46725. And the continuance waiting till next month does not change anything with what the judge's decree states, which the judge's decree states that the land be split off from the rental to Airbnb. And I keep the land. I won the house. I won the land in court. She got the Airbnb. That's the judge's decree. So filing a continuance, pushing it down the road does nothing. He already has the decree. And her stating me paying her out has no effect because that's a QDRO on a 401k. It has nothing to do with the judge's decree splitting the land off, putting it in her name, or putting the farmland in my name, putting Airbnb in her name. That's what the judge has the decree and has the order in. It has to be done. None of us can affect that. That is his judge's order. And a payment has nothing to do with down the road what needs split off. That's what the judge has already ordered.
What's a QDRO?
So that's where you take your 401k and then you can give it to, like in a divorce situation, to pay off. So the judge's decree was I keep the marital home, I keep the land, she gets the Airbnb. So I offset that with my 401k, with my retirement, and that's what she gets. I've won in court twice with that. Not once. She took me back to trial a second time. Now she's taking me back again. But going to court for a QDRO, which is what the judge decreed I could pay out on to offset her, has nothing to do with this. This is about splitting off from the judge's decree the farmland, which he gave to me, from the Airbnb, which I don't want. She wants it. The judge decreed it. That's hers. It needs split off, put in her name. The farmland needs put in my name. Pushing it down the road a month, I'll have to pay for newspapers again. I'll have to pay for getting the signs put up and send the letters out again. I paid all that. And I've also paid Walkers for all their time in this, the full value, $1,800 to get it surveyed, which is what the judge's decree wants. I set it up. I called Walkers. I said, I want 3 acres. That's what your judge's decreed. That's what he did. He set it up as 3 acres. She thinks 2.55 is not correct. They set up 3 acres. That's what they did. So. Any questions for me?
Any questions? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this petition?
I will add that in the decree, it doesn't specifically set out, I mean, it says, it describes the property as like agricultural land and the Airbnb, and it gives general acres, but it doesn't give a specific plat or anything like that. So just so you guys are aware.
Does that affect the decision we're making now?
No, I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, I will close public comment and turn the floor over to the Planning Commission.
I guess my thoughts, looking at the decree of the judge, I'm asking Liz here, that this needs split off as part of the divorce. That we should, that it's gotta be split off.
Yeah.
I don't know that continuing it is not with, I don't know, divorce, I don't know what else in that, but I'm just trying to figure out
Right.
what
So
we should do.
the judge the judge can't order you guys to do anything.
No.
Just them. And when someone violates an order or doesn't cooperate with an order in a family law case, the other party has remedies they can take up with the judge. So you guys can decide on the plat today. You can continue it out. You can say, look, come back with an order from the judge saying she's got to sign this or do something with it. Those are kind of your options at this point. Let them figure it out in the divorce court and then come back when that's settled. You guys could do any of those.
I guess in my opinion, they both agreed on the 3 acres. That was one common thing. So, you know, if we can, I guess, hurry up the process for both of you, I'd rather just take care of it and then let the court take care of the rest. So,
Yeah. I agree.
I guess with that, I'll make a motion to approve 26 West Subdivision 11 with recommendations from staff.
I'd second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let's take a roll call vote, please, Brent.
Yes, sir. Travis Baker.
Aye.
Stacy Petrovas.
Aye.
Dane Drew.
Aye.
Jack Green.
Aye.
Tim Longenball. Mark Johnson.
Aye.
Tim Kurtzessler.
Aye.
Joe Wolf.
Aye.
And Brent Emmerich.
Aye. That motion passes. That finishes up new business. We'll move right into other business, which.
No, we still have the ZRA one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Mark that off too soon. You did sneak that in under new business, even though
Yes.
it doesn't feel like new business. 26 ZOA1. That would be our text amendment for a moratorium on data centers. And I'm sure you have a few slides on that, Nathan.
What gave you that idea? Okay, so let's see here. Going to these slides. So this is basically a summary of what's in your written packet, which isn't a formal staff report, but more of a memo summarizing the proposal. This is a moratorium in data centers. Commissioners, as we discussed last month, requested at their one of their July meetings that the Planning Commission prepare a moratorium on data centers with the caveats, with 2 caveats. One, that the moratorium be effective for 1 year or until standards that regulate data centers are adopted. It would be in effect until whichever comes first of those 2 things. And the other caveat being that the moratorium not be a blanket moratorium, because data centers as a definition can be very broad and include things like server rooms and small quote unquote data centers, data infrastructure, IT back end sort of things that might impact existing businesses or businesses that are coming in that are not data centers as we're thinking of regulating. So that is integrated into the proposed text of the ordinance, which I'll show to you. If you do make a recommendation tonight, this would be on the commissioner's September 8th agenda. And presumably they would take action at that time. So the actual text, the data center definition for the moratorium ordinance, we may use this similar language as we actually develop our regulations, or maybe it gets modified or replaced through that process. But this is the definition, so it's all or portion of a facility used primarily for data services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera there. So basically anything processing, storing, manipulating, analyzing, distribution, and so on of data technology, very broad, very blanket, constitutes a data center. The exceptions would be a data center, a quote-unquote data center that serves a primary use or business on the same property in an accessory, subordinate, and incidental capacity to the primary use of or business, as well as a data center that exclusively serves a telecom facility, so cell tower, for example, service provider, so Surf or Comcast or Brightspeed, or a public utility. Those also are known as head-ends or telecommunications hubs. So those two things would be accepted out. I know we have quote-unquote data centers in existing businesses that could be caught up in this, and I was told that we could have a service provider locating one in Whitley County, as you know, broadband is actually growing in Whitley County, so one of those service providers is looking for the potential for a site here, possibly within this next year. So that covers us. Public utilities by state law are exempt from zoning, but it's included in here just for the sake of completeness. And then the moratorium itself is on the issuance of any permits to any person, firm, or entity seeking to place or install a data center. So things like filing for petitions and so on could technically be done, even though the process and regulations aren't there yet, but the actual permitting of data centers is what the moratorium actually attaches to. Again, we haven't had any filings or proposals for any data centers, but just wanted to make sure it was clear how exactly the moratorium worked. And then for reference, this is a text amendment by technicality. So the review criteria for this says zone map amendments. This is text amendment, but criteria are the same. So you need to pay reasonable regard to these items. I don't have any commentary on these items. Moratoriums are such a unique animal, but it's a reminder that you do need to pay reasonable regard to these. So with that, any questions for me?
The first exception that you cited, Nathan, it needs to be on the same property. It doesn't necessarily need to be connected or contained within the primary building.
That is correct. The way that's written, that is correct. I know of no place that wouldn't be within the same building. Unless you, again, being very broad, you might say that the fiber, I don't even know what to call them, junction box. I mean, the way this is written, that could even be applied to that. So that might be an instance, but you're right. If this was something new, it could be separate, the way it's written.
Alrighty, any other questions for Nathan? Alrighty, thank you, Nathan. So we will move right into a public comment on 26WZOA1. Please again state your name and address, and if you could, please don't repeat what other people have said, and The podium is open.
I just have my name is Gerald Vanderveer. I live at 2401 Indiana 9, Columbia City, 46725. My question would be is, during this moratorium, if somebody prior to the rules being finalized, would there be any way, I guess what I'm looking for is to make sure nothing can be grandfathered or vested. So if somebody comes in now and we put the rules in September, I want to make sure that they can't grandfather past anything we put together to try and, safeguard our community.
Liz, what's your thought on the?
It would depend on what the usage is, like how they're using it and whether or not it. If it's small, that wouldn't necessarily qualify. So I think it would depend on size.
So perhaps it's best to remind you what the current process is, because data centers aren't in the code right now at all. It's interpreted that because of that, they're not similar enough to anything else. The code says that if it's a use that's not otherwise in the code, it's a special exception under heavy industrial. So they would have to find a piece of property zoned heavy industrial and get a special exception approved, or rezone to heavy industrial and get a special exception approved. That rezoning is, I'm going to say, very difficult because it would go through planning commission and commissioners. Special exception, there are 1 or 2 properties that are zoned heavy industrial right now, but special exception would still go through Board of Zoning Appeals and have a high level of scrutiny. So that is the current process, and if they were being grandfathered, that would be the process that would be grandfathered.
Right.
It's going to be, I can't say it's impossible. I can't speak for these guys and the commissioners or the Board of Zoning Appeals, but I will say it would be very, very difficult. Having standards in place, knowing what the game plan is, no matter how restrictive they are, is going to be better for a company to know what the game plan, what the rules are, than going through 2 very onerous processes. But so yes, it could be done, but it'd be difficult.
Okay. Yeah, I'll add to that we're fortunate with the county that we do have it in our zoning code that it does state that if it's not a use stated in the code somewhere, it has to go through this process of the heaviest of heaviest with special exceptions. So we've got kind of a safeguard in our
Okay.
for that situation.
That's a good point. Some communities don't have that, and so it's more of a battleground.
Yeah. Okay.
Good question. Thank you.
Hello. Paul Ulrich, 348 North Chauncey Street. I just wanted to voice the community's overwhelming support for this moratorium and let you guys know where we stand, protecting our future and our community from things like this. When I lived in Arlington, Texas for 15 years, I saw big industry come in and drill right underneath my house, tell everybody a bunch of lies, and they left a big mess and ended up not being worth it. It polluted our community. It killed people. The pollution is just a tough thing to deal with. It's hard to hold somebody accountable when they have lawyers that will spend millions of dollars on it. So as a warning to that, I want to let everybody know. And also, if you guys would be so kind, on maybe to share with us where you guys see this going, should a large industry, whether it's a data center or not, I think we should think about having any type of large business, big money come in to our community and want to change it and possibly pollute our water, shift our ground, change our traffic patterns, change our weather patterns. We should consider having something in place where it says that a community needs to come together and be able to vote on things like this, and alleviate some of the burden that you guys have to share for that. So I would like to appreciate you. If you guys would like to share with me, though, if I could ask a question, kind of where you guys stand on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really pro big business and getting something like that in that might consume a lot of electricity and water resources and have a lot of pollution, versus 1 being heavily against that.
Okay, we're just taking comment right now.
Okay.
I will open the floor up to the planning commission after public comment, and then anybody that wants to speak up here can express their knowledge, their opinions, their insights in any way. So we'll just stick to public comment right now.
Appreciate that. We'd like to know where you guys stand so we know what we need to do from a community standpoint.
So I swear to tell the truth.
Do you swear affirm that any statements you make before the commission tonight will be the truth? If so, state I do.
I do. Joanne Knoll, 8099 South, 200 East, Columbia City. Question more for Nathan. Am I correct that when an application is filed, the ordinance that is in place at the time is what governs the project? Is that correct?
That is correct, but in what context are you asking? Because there's a couple of different ways that could go.
They would not be able to, a large data center would not be able to file a permit until they have identified a property and it's been properly rezoned in order to fit their project. Is that correct? They have to have all that underlying stuff done. So they would have to go through the BZA and whatever those things are. They have to have that all done before they can file an application. Otherwise, their application is not complete.
Correct. We would not be able to issue that application. Yes. Okay, I get what you're saying.
Are you talking about like a building permit?
No,
Right.
I'm talking when they file, the date that they file their application for a permit. Not that you issue it, but the
Right.
date you file it is the ordinance that governs the project.
So the state law, and Liz, you can chime in if you find the exact reference, but the state law says that the clock that attaches, that provision attaches when the application is complete. So the application is not complete if things aren't in place.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. So they'd have to go through all the processes that you mentioned.
Right.
That would have to be done before the clock starts.
If for some reason someone wanted to apply for a building permit while things are pending, sure, we would put the permit in pending, but it would not be a complete application until they had everything in place underlined.
That's what I understood. I just want to make sure. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm not sure if this is the right time. Is there going to be public comment about like the rules and regulations you guys were going to talk about? I didn't quite understand the agenda. It was at the very end.
So that'll be up to the president and the commission on that. It's not advertised as a public hearing, so it'll be up to their discretion.
I'd prefer anybody that wants to speak on data centers to do it right now at this point.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay.
So, yes, don't forget to state your name and address.
Michael Flosa, 3702 South 600 East. So a while back, there was, a lot of people in here talking about why no data centers. There was a lot of feelings, and there were some things that the commission wanted to know that a lot of people didn't really, go over. So there's one thing that's really not talked about a whole lot when it comes to data centers. Water and electricity. That's a big deal, but noise really hasn't. When I was here, it wasn't really talked about whatsoever. And I sent a research paper through it was done by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and it was in regards to wind turbines. But the same thing could be said for data centers, because wind turbines have a constant noise like data centers. So I felt like the research that I sent to the commission plays a part in what I'm about to say. So basically, it's about this is about wildlife, but you can put it in perspective of a human too, right? So basically, between 35 and 48 decibels is when they found the U.S. Fish Wildlife found that there was a disturbance in wildlife and breeding patterns and migratory patterns and all that, and communication with each other. So that was kind of like the threshold, 35 to 48 decibels. So I found a source through Brockovich AI data reporting, and it kind of went over what the typical decibel levels are based on your distance from a data center. Typically, it's 65 decibels within a quarter mile of the data center. Within a quarter mile to 3/4 of a mile, it's 50 to 65 decibels. And this says sleep disruption probable. Who recommends below 40 decibels for outdoor residential areas at night? And then it really not until you get out to 1.5 to 2.5 miles is when it gets under that 40 decibel threshold. So if there was a data center proposed, it would be wise to make sure that you're within, 2 miles from a home. I can't imagine having a 200 hertz of sound penetrating my house 24/7. I know a lot of us live in the country and we know how sound travels out there. So I'd venture to say some of these distances are probably not as far as they should be. But I guess I wanted to kind of go over that. And I've got the sources, I've got the study I can give to whoever. But I wanted to really make sure that the sound piece of it was taken care of, because I know a lot of people care about the water and electricity because that affects our bills, but people don't really think about the sleep or the migraines or even wildlife. So I just wanted to kind of speak on that behalf, because I didn't feel like it was addressed at the original hearing in July, I think it was, or June. So
we'll take your copy.
If you've got copies of those, I'll take them for the record.
So that's what I sent as an email, but here are the two new pieces.
All right.
And then the sources. So I got the source first.
I think it was on the back of it.
I got the source written.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a terrible public speaker, so you have to excuse me. Suzanne Converse, 301 South Main Street in South Whitley. I have a lot of concerns: the noise, the pollution, the what it does to the animals, what the land we have to destroy to build these things. That the United States has almost double of any other country. At some point there has to be a stop to this. The way we've got fires going in the country. What if one of these would start on fire? The floods. We've got all these floods. How would that affect that? And then how would it affect the water, the flood water that goes around would go out? I think at some point we need to put a stop to them, and I really would hate to have this small community have to deal with this. I work with people that live in Allen County, and they talk about the noise, and they're destroying more wetlands to add to the Google. I would really like to see us just do something that we wouldn't allow this. That's all I got to say.
Good evening, Katie Jackemeyer Street, 4419 North Etna Road, Columbia City, Indiana 46725. I'm in favor of the moratorium. I really appreciate you guys voting in favor of that. And I'm in favor of that because I'm in favor of restrictions on the square footage of the size of the property and building that would house and be utilized as a data center facility. I'm in favor of limiting the usage of the utilities. including but not limited to the water directly from a well or any other below ground water source. I'm in favor of limiting space dedicated to producing energy outside of the main infrastructure. For example, a large array of ground-mounted solar panels. I'm in favor of rejecting tax breaks and other incentives that are cost saving for those proposing data centers. I'm in favor of requiring energy saving strategies on utility usage to minimize waste. An example would be, instead of using water to cool the systems because they generate a lot of heat, utilizing that heat to generate electricity in some fashion. They can figure that out. I'm in favor of keeping backup generation systems energy efficient and clean to maintain air quality and water quality. I'm in favor of enforcing noise regulations and decibel maximums in order to comply with noise ordinance. This includes during emergency events. When possible, backup generation would be utilized. I'm in favor of environmental protections for natural habitats. For example, no building near or on wetlands, waterways, or forested areas. My main concern would be if a data center is approved and then the company applies for exemptions after construction has begun. I would like a hard stop on amendments and exceptions on finalized plans. I don't want to see tactics used or being used in our community like they are happening in Fort Wayne, the Google data center. So I am definitely in favor of the moratorium, and I appreciate the 1-year moratorium that you guys have that are voting on. Would you like this, my in favor of list?
Yeah, if you have a copy for me that I can put with the records, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't realize this didn't go over to the other thing, so my apologies. It's very quick though. My name once again is Gerald Vanderveer. I live at 2401 South State Road 9. I support the moratorium as well. I appreciate that the county is taking time to develop standards before a project is approved or even submitted. My concern is what happens during that time, and more importantly, what the final standards are that actually protect us. I would ask that you not write an ordinance that regulates only something called a data center. I work with private equity companies, and it is not anything to mess with. Like, you dot every I, cross every T. There's nothing but ways that they will figure out how to get what they want. So there is a different way that you want to kind of approach this. If you call it data center, you can change names, you can change all sorts of different things. Now they'll go nuclear, they'll do something else. That'll be a trick. Technology changes, business model changes, projects can be renamed, divided into phases, placed in different parcels, and structured through different companies. The rules need to follow the impact and not the label. Before this moratorium is lifted, I believe the county needs clear, measurable protections addressing at least the following. Water. A maximum withdrawal and consumption, baseline groundwater levels, and water quality testing before construction, and continued monitoring during operation. DNR already maintains important well, groundwater, and significant withdrawal information. Use it, but don't rely on a statewide records alone. A qualifying project should establish site-specific conditions before construction, so we have something meaningful to compare against if conditions change. Power. Require disclosure of maximum electrical demand, on-site generation, and any transmission or utility infrastructure the project will require. Quick note on that. The Google is slated as a 100 megawatt center. They have 179 generators that will push out 527 megawatts. The difference there is really significant because the amount of diesel fuel that you have to store there to run that thing for 72 hours goes from 200,000 gallons to 1 million gallons. So what do we have that if something happens there, that thing, something bad, you got to think about the worst case scenario. So we have to have all these things in there. Noise, establish enforceable daytime and nighttime limits to make sure the measurement standards address tonal and low frequency noise, not just single overall sound level. That would be DBA and DBC. Generators and fuel, require disclosure of the total number and capacity of generators, total on-site fuel storage, emissions, containment, spill response, and emergency service requirements. Roads, drainage, and construction. Address truck traffic, road damage, stormwater, runoff, soil disturbance, and other infrastructure impacts before construction begins. Those dirty water samples you see people showing, that's because of the construction. They're impacting the earth and stirring up the water. Disclosure. Require both expected and maximum resource demands. The county needs to understand the worst reasonable operating case, not just average usage. Independent review. Do not rely entirely on studies prepared for the applicant. The county should have access to qualified independent experts. Financial responsibility, and I think this is going to be one of our bigger ones. If a project causes verified harm, requires remediation, closes, or must be decommissioned, the decommissioning is where they get you, on these things, because they're not going to run for 50 years. I mean, you have a 50-year-old computer? Nobody does, because they don't last that long. So they'll get rid of that, and then we're stuck trying to foot the bill and get rid of one of these things and remediate it. So they can get a bond for that. We just don't want it to fall on the taxpayers. Enforcement, there needs to be a clear inspection, reporting, and enforcement authority after a facility begins operating. An ordinance is only as good as our ability to enforce it. And please evaluate related buildings, parcels, companies, and development phases together when they function as one project. One development should not avoid a threshold because it was divided into smaller pieces. I would also ask that you make sure nothing gains a grandfathered or vested position. That was the first thing I said. And I understand there's legitimate confidential information. Sometimes you gotta, that's the way this game works. But confidentiality should not become the commitment. So we just need to be really sure that if we do have some of these things where we have to discuss it and there is those kind of requirements, that we make sure that there's nothing gets passed through or scuttled under. I mean, they just pulled that in Marion County. And they've done it other places. This isn't like a shocker. So we just got to make sure that we're covering ourselves. I'm not asking you to stop growth. I have no problem with the data center. I have a problem with a data center that I have to pay for, or that screws up my kids' lives, or my water, or all of a sudden my electric bill doubles, or they just decide they're going to only do that. I mean, they're doing that in very wealthy counties in California, where they're pulling the power away from them and just diverting it to the data centers because they'll pay more. And, that's their thing. Sorry. So I'm not against data centers. I'm against them causing our community harm. If they take care of everything, they want to come in and actually provide all this stuff, great. Cool, let's do it. But that's usually not the case. Those guys, those are unicorns, and they're not beating down our doors trying to ask for freebies, right? So we got to be careful on that. Because, realistically, the technology and everything is going to be completely different 5 years from now. So if we build the protections around measurable impacts instead of an industry name or anything, because quite frankly, I don't care if a pickle factory comes in here. If it screws up my water, it still screwed up my water, right? Like, I don't care what the facility is that comes in here. These kind of protections actually cover anything, no matter what it is. Somebody comes in here to build weapons or pickles or, AI data centers. If they make an impact, they're going to be responsible for cleaning it up. Yeah, take the months necessary to get this right. Just make sure the moratorium actually protects us while you do it. That was it. Thank you.
Do you swear or affirm that any statements you make before the commission tonight will be the truth? If so, state I do. I do. All right, girl, set.
Stephanie Pierce, 2367 West 700 North, Columbia City. I am not in favor of data centers. However, with you guys doing the moratorium and going through your data regulations, I want to know if we will be notified of these regulations before they're voted on and adopted into law, if we will have a chance to have public input on those. I also would like that we don't provide tax breaks for these companies, as Indiana already has one of the highest incentives for data centers. Why should we give them tax breaks? I mean, they're going to use all of our utilities are going to use our local resources, but we're not going to get anything out of them. They don't provide enough employment to offset those tax breaks. I'm going to ask about NDAs. I'd like to see that put into the regulation. Everybody talks about the big one in Fort Wayne. Somebody mentioned one in Marion. I have family in southern Indiana. Posey County now has 4 under NDAs. So it would be nice that we don't have those here. The transparency for the public should be there. We should have knowledge that these requests have been made. We should have input on them because they're going to affect our daily life. And that's all I have.
Anyone else? So if you would like to speak on data centers, this is your chance, because I think once we move into other business, I want that time to be available to the Planning Commission for discussion and also with staff. So if you're here tonight and you want to speak, this is your time. Okay, I will close public comment and turn the floor over to the Planning Commission.
Brent?
That's what we're doing. That's why we're here.
I know Nathan sent out an email, and I've seen some of you people looking at this. This webinar answered a lot of questions, and that for us, many of the rules. When you hear emissions, you think of car emissions. Emissions also on this board includes noise, light, that we go through every hearing, BZA, and that. So we are doing our due diligence. So yes, are we in an infancy? But we are learning. So just as the gentleman from Virginia said, 2.5 years ago, he decided he needed to know. Their county is the largest data center place in the world. But then I will state what I stated in one of the last meetings. We are part of the problem. We are going out and finding stuff and researching stuff on computers and that. And we want to make things easier. That is what they've done with AI. And AI is constantly learning. And that progresses the fact. You have to decide, do you want to be taken care of, or do you want to forge your own way? So, and part of being an informed electorate is coming to meetings like this. So, but we are doing our due diligence on these things.
So, Mr. President, our discussion right now involves the moratorium.
Yeah, I would like to get focused on the moratorium. I mean, Joe's comments were very good, and I would if you're on the Planning Commission, you haven't watched the video from the link that Nathan sent, I'd recommend you do it, because the speaker from Loudoun County was an expert. I mean, I would say there's nobody that knows more than him. Probably, I would think you'd be hard pressed to find more of an authority on data centers than that gentleman. So, but yeah, we are here at this time to make a decision on this moratorium that's been presented to us.
I'm all in favor of the moratorium for the period that's been set up. That's going to give us time to help make these decisions that's going to reflect on everybody. So I'm all in favor of it.
So
Yes,
Nathan,
I will make a motion. Excuse me, go ahead.
I do have a question for Nathan.
Oh, go. I'll hold back.
So the language of the moratorium has been run before legal staff to kind of ensure that if anything comes up in the interim, the language is clear enough not to have to take it to court.
So the language for this moratorium is identical to previous moratoria, but Liz, you can speak to
I
your
reviewed
review.
it and I'm comfortable with it.
Okay.
And I believe it will go to the commissioners and their legal counsel will review it as well.
Okay. Great. Thank you. I'll second.
Well, I'll revert back to my motion for the approval of the moratorium.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Point of clarification, that is a favorable recommendation to the commissioners?
Favorable.
In favor of this moratorium being presented. Any further discussion? Okay, we have a roll call vote, please, Brent.
Yes, sir.
Oh, you got a question? No. Oh.
Joe Wolf.
Aye.
Kim Kurtzessler.
Aye.
Mark Johnson. Tim Longenball. Jack Green.
Aye.
Dane Drew.
Aye.
Stacy Petrovas.
Aye.
Travis Baker.
Aye.
And Brent Everett.
Aye. So that moratorium recommendation will be sent over to the commissioners for their vote next month. Moving on to other business. Number 6 is data center regulation drafting. And I'll turn the floor over to Nathan to kind of explain what you have in mind for tonight and maybe as this process moves forward here into the fall.
So tonight, I don't want to take, we'll take as much time as it takes, but I want to cut it off by 9 o'clock for sure. I don't think anyone wants to be here longer than that. And we're at the beginning of the process, and this is more of you giving me feedback on top level questions so I can then draft things. Early on, you had requested that staff do the heavy lifting of the actual code writing rather than doing a workshop process or something like that. And the more we know, as Joe said, everyone's had opportunities to educate yourselves and so on. And I really appreciate you doing that. That makes everybody more on the same page. So that means most of the actual writing itself is more technical and so more staff driven rather than more of a workshop style where there's many open-ended questions. So with that though, I do have again requests for guidance from you. I'm not one, as you know, I'm not one to just draft something and slap it down in front of you and say here you go. It's more of a give me feedback, give me again answers to some of these top level questions. And I'll touch on a couple of the things that were mentioned later, especially the timeline is at the very end of these slides. So, but just to reiterate the working concept that we're working with right now, one, permit accessory and incidental quote unquote data centers that are part of businesses, utilities, etc. And that's, again, very similar to what we just talked about with the moratorium exception there. Number 2, do create regulations for small and medium data centers that are consistent with county industrial areas. So we have a lot of industrial parks. We have a lot of very successful businesses in varying sizes of buildings, varying sizes performance standards involved with those. And we've already established that there could be a potential for small and medium data centers to fit into that realm. How do they fit? How do we make that consistent? Again, the working concept, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, is to figure out how to make that happen. And then the other piece of it is to discourage large and hyperscale data centers, which are not similar to what we already have in existing businesses in Whitley County. And then associated with that, how do we distinguish and what are the thresholds between each of those 3 or 4, maybe 5 different categories if you start separating them out. But for the most part, we're going to really focus on these regulations. It's easy to say past a certain point, it's just very difficult. So hyperscale, that's probably going to be heavy industrial with special exception or possibly a couple other options. The smallest stuff, the accessory stuff, that too is fairly easy. It's the middle stuff, and how do we create that consistency? That's, I think we're all really going to focus most of our time, and I think that's where most of the concern comes from, is making sure that we have data centers or other industry. These standards may actually bleed over into industry generally, and that's a related conversation we may have as we go forward. How do we make this compatible for Whitley County? So this is a laundry list of different things that we need to do. We're not doing all of them tonight. There are not going to be set answers tonight. I do have a couple different recommendations, and the slides that I handed out do have some recommendations as well. But these are things that need to happen. We need to figure out how to define data center sizes. If we have the smallest ones, well, what does that mean? What are big ones? So on. Where are they permissible? Development standards, which are what we typically think of as setbacks, separation, height, building height, aesthetics more generally. Performance standards, this is the one that we will probably have the absolute most discussion on as we go forward over the next few months. And then finally, policy standards. Those are things that really aren't necessarily in the zoning code. They're in the zoning code as requirements potentially, but not necessarily things that are they're outside references. For example, development agreements. Requiring a development agreement to be in place is something that most communities that are trying to allow for some data centers are requiring. Typically, it is not the Plan Commission who's doing the development agreement. It is the legislative body, the executive, so in our case, the commissioners. But having that in the zoning code to require it makes sense. Then you defer it. I see Stacy's smile down there. Construction period regulations, because it's temporary, construction period regulations are more policy than purely zoning. So that too kind of is in between. And as was mentioned, decommissioning also fits into that. And we've handled decommissioning a couple different ways with other uses. So, and we may find that with this, it may be really important. It may be something that we feel is self-addressing. So there's a couple different ways that may happen too, again, as we go forward. So basically, these slides for tonight start at that top one. So the first one is defining things. Got 3 different options here. If you guys have other thoughts, toss them out. But these are the ones that I'm have on slides at least. Number 1 would be power usage. Number 2 would be floor area, which we've kind of discussed at previous meetings. And then number 3 would be gross land area, which actually one of the people who spoke mentioned actual land area as opposed to the other 2 measures. Does anybody have any other potential criteria for defining size? Okay, just to know if somebody had come across something that might be useful. So power usage is, as from what I can tell, kind of the de facto standard in many cases. The reason for that, that is the standard that is used by the industry to describe what size a data center is. It's how much power is being used, be it 10 megawatt or 350 megawatt, or even smaller than 10 in some instances. So I've got pros and cons here. That is definitely a pro. It's very compatible with industry language. Everybody knows what they're talking about, at least in terms of the industry and the proposals and so on. It's very clear on what the power maximum or the utilization of power is, because that's what's on the nameplate. That's a 300 megawatt data center. You know what you're getting. Also with that, because you know what that power usage is, increased efficiency wouldn't change the power usage. You might put more servers into a data center, which is great. Technology makes things more efficient, but the actual power usage wouldn't change. And that would be reinforced by our zoning definitions. The cons, we're here dealing largely with performance effects, making sure that our neighbors are protected from these adverse effects. And talking about power usage, other than the one effect to power, it doesn't really fit with things like noise or what does the building look like, or how much lighting there is, or what size the building is, and so on. So it's a kind of an obtuse standard. And from an administration standpoint, I can't go out and just look at anything and say, oh, you're using 310 megawatts today. You are now over the zoning limit. That's kind of a self-enforcing, have to rely on them, as well as the power company to say, yeah, you have these limitations. So that's a con. This is AI generated. So I just flat out, you can tell that. But it is simply an illustration, 100 megawatt, 300 megawatt, 1 gigawatt. From what I can tell, the current trends, 300 megawatts seems to be the current largest building size based upon wattage. And that is largely based upon substation capacities. If you go larger than that, you're exceeding what is a quote-unquote normal substation. So instead of having larger, more powerful single buildings, you go to what is on the right-hand side, multiple campus-style buildings, and that's what's at Google in New Haven, Fort Wayne, Amazon up in New Carlisle. That's your hyperscale stuff. It's hyperscale because it's multiple buildings, many acres, and so on. 300 megawatts could be one single building of a few 100,000 square feet. Could be segmented, as you can see there. I can't speak to the accuracy of what AI generated. I will also say it mentions 50 acres on the slide there. Something like this could be done in quite a bit smaller acreage as well, perhaps even as small as half that. And then 100 megawatt is something smaller, more of a single user. As you've probably started to encounter, there's differences between co-located data centers, AI data centers, storage, a couple other subtypes as well. And the power usage, how they're cooled, they all reflect different needs for their technology that they have going in there. So for us, from a more homogeneous, uniform zoning code perspective, where we have to address a proposal, whether it's AI data center or if it's just a storage data center or something in between, it's good to know that there's different needs, but we still have to come back to the code needs to be relatively concise and not trying to address every different which way. We have to know how to encompass that. So, okay, back to defining things. Floor area and building size. Pro building area is readily apparent to outside observers. They can say that building's bigger than that building. Very easy. It's also easy to regulate until you get to, say, mezzanine size or something like half floors, things like that. But we get a permit request in, we charge by square footage. So it's a very easy thing to regulate. It also allows for changes in power usage within a set building size. So if our criteria is you can have a 250,000 square foot building, you can take whatever power you can get to it. Great, just don't exceed 250,000 square feet. Gives the proposer some flexibility in that way, but it also minimizes the leverage that we have over power usage as being a performance standard. Cons, it's unrelated to industry classifications because of the fact that different types of data centers use different areas and building size differs, whereas power is a bit more standard. And then the aggregation of building sizes, and I clarify that here, would two 200,000 square foot buildings have the same effects as one 400,000 square foot building? Do they have the same effects on the developer side? Can you put the same amount of stuff in them? And then on the public side, what we're looking at more carefully is it more impactful to aesthetics, the eye, I guess, to have two buildings or one building? So what, two smallish buildings versus one larger building? Don't have an exact answer in there, but and then finally, gross land area was the third option that I was contemplating on how we divvy this up. That's just how much land area you're using for this data center. Is it 40 acres? Is it 20 acres? Is it 800 acres? Probably not 800 because, again, that's definitely hyperscale. But pros, again, very easy to regulate. Does still allow for changes in that power usage within a set building size. Gives some flexibility. Could also encourage more site-sensitive land usage, meaning that if you have a set land size, say our threshold is 40 acres, then a developer may be more land conscious and conserve more land by saying, I want to stay within 40 acres, rather than saying, oh, I need to have an additional 20 acres for a few more generators than I originally had plotted. So I'm going to go buy 20 more acres for these generators. More likely to encourage that sensitive design. On the flip side, I will also say that if you have it by acreage, if you happen to have a wetland on that 40 acres, well, that wetland very well could be mitigated. Filled, whatever. Indiana would be mitigated. You'd have to create new wetlands elsewhere. So that would be a con. Again, it's unrelated to industry classifications. Acreage isn't necessarily apparent to outside observers. You can't say, okay, that building is on 20 acres or is it on 40 acres? I'm not really sure. So that's, it could be, if you look at, say, GIS, you know how big something is. And then compliance with any required buffers, setbacks, etc. could alter the classification. So if we're requiring a buffer as part of the performance standards, that could change the acreage that's required, which could change the classification that this is, and bump something from a small classification to a medium classification, for example. So, tossing it out to you guys. Thoughts on how I should pursue defining this? Do any of these naturally feel to you like do any of these feel to you to be the natural way to go?
I think we should just set requirements on everything, the building size, the acreage, everything. Because
the biggest thing I picked up from the webinar was the power usage is consistent and it's always backed up. So when you have, if it's 100 megawatts, you're going to plan for 200 megawatts or either 300 megawatts, so you have a constant supply of power.
Right.
So,
Okay. And Dane, I was planning on having elements, but not as classification necessarily. They would still come into development standards, for example. So, anybody else want to say something?
Is there a reason that we didn't add water usage to this?
Water use, yes, there is.
Okay.
That's because cooling can change. Some places, I'll get to this when I talk about water, but water usage does greatly differ. You can use very, very little water, as we found out with one of the data centers in Northwest Indiana. It's all air conditioned. Their water usage is equivalent to about 3 homes. But their power usage, on the other hand, because you're running air conditioners, is quite a bit higher. So, okay, well, I will take that as a probably use megawatt, because that's an industry standard, as our classification, and then use these other factors as part of the descriptor and development standards. I think that's a fair way of viewing it, and I'll take that in the initial code drafts, and we'll see where it goes.
So you're saying that if the footprint or the land usage is high, even though it's not part of the classification, it will still get regulated within certain limits?
Yes. So if you have, say, a 50 megawatt facility, but it happens to be on 100 acres, it would be potentially, it'd be regulated the same as a 50 megawatt facility on 20 acres. So we still have performance standards that will also come into play. But just defining size is this initial question.
Right now, he's just trying to figure out what groups we're putting them in. Are we grouping them by power usage and then going through the other stuff? Are we doing them by building size and then going through the other stuff? Basically breaking down how are we going to divide out.
Yeah. You just have to break it
that
out.
That first classification. Where are we starting at?
Technology changing all the time. They can get smaller and smaller.
You got to define one at a time.
Not to bring up a somewhat different topic, but confined feeding operations, we break it out by the number of animals in each operation.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly the best way of doing that, but it's a way of doing it. And in that case, it's the way EPA and IDEM regulate. So we also use it. But honestly, there are other ways that we can do it that could yield similar effects, or in some ways better effects. So, okay.
I have a question, Nathan.
Yeah.
What was the size of the building we toured? Was that like 200,000 square feet?
I think it was just shy of.
Yeah, it was 170, I believe.
180.
No, was that what was the megawatt size of that?
That was
20. You guys remember?
20.
Okay. Is there, as we're doing this, if you go megawatts and then we go into the building size, is there standards for a 20 megawatt needs this many square feet or this many? How do we define that as far as going a step further? You know, we could say you want a 20 megawatt building, but you got to put it in a 50,000 square foot thing.
Right.
And they can't do that. So how do we?
And the building that
you guys can define and.
Yeah, the building that we toured, and for just full disclosure, a couple of the Plan Commission members and commissioners and a couple other, staff, a couple other people toured the State Line Data Center, which is in Hammond. It's literally at the state line. They offered a tour. That was 3 weeks ago. So it's somewhat unique because it's new enough to really have technology. More modern technology, but it's still old enough that it's only 20 megawatts, for example, rather than 100 megawatts. And yeah, I think that's a good example because what they originally had designed it for, the co-location, would have used the entire building. and the entire power usage. And now they've split it into these different types of data centers, some of which is co-locate, some of which is AI, some of which was I can't remember the third part, but they wound up having a lot of empty space in there because it's the server racks are a lot denser in parts of it, using all the power, but they actually have a somewhat oversized building. But yeah, I will try and figure out how to match square footage, or at least correlate square footage in megawatts for you. I just also have to know that with technology and changing, it's not going to keep up. Yeah. Okay. Moving along here for everybody. Oops. Locations permissible. This one won't be nearly as much because I think we all have a pretty good understanding. Possible zoning districts: heavy industrial, IN, light industrial, IPM. I put in general commercial possibly for the smallest data centers, the ones that might be, say, 5,000 square feet. Again, depending on how we define data center, it might be those IT firms, for example, could be lumped in here. And then also, as we're talking about zoning districts, instead of using heavy industrial plus a special exception for regulating large and hyperscale, using a overlay for those and requiring a rezoning to an overlay, similar to what we've done with solar. If you have commercial scale, utility scale solar, you have to get a solar overlay approved through the commissioners as a rezoning, and then you would have additional standards. That may be an appropriate way of handling those largest ones. So in theory, we really regulate for the medium ones in our standard zoning districts, and then the overlay then would handle the biggest ones. It makes sure that it's a discretionary action through the commissioners. You get that public input through both you guys as Planning Commission and through the legislative side with the commissioners. And then pretty certain special exception approval is going to happen. I think we've already discussed that. We already assume that. The by right probably is just simply those very smallest ones, but the ones, again, that we're really focusing on would be special exception. The level of regulation attached with that special exception may change. So thoughts on any of these? Am I on the right boat with these? Okay.
So with the zoning districts, you're looking at power cutoffs for them as well?
Yes. That if we use megawatt, let's say a cutoff is at 100 megawatt, and if you're over 100 megawatts, you are the large or medium large, whatever we call it. And so that's only permissible in heavy industrial. If you're under that, then it could be IPM, something along those lines. That's a detail that we will have to work through. But, and again, I'm not exactly certain how GC will come in, but I wanted to make sure that was an option because I do feel like that smallest category might fit. And again, if we have a definition that kind of doesn't blanket cover them, then that's not so crucial. Oh, just for everyone's reference, these are maps of our industrial areas. So this is our existing IN zoning, the heavy gray. So you have SDI here, what is now Lear Corp and Chromosource, and then fertilizer plant down here at 9 and 14. IPM, pretty much where you would expect it. We do have some spots of IPM, for example, Rife. Is it Reef or Rife on that side? Rife down there. Their mixer plant right there on Sierra 5. And then GC, again, kind of mixture throughout the county. Okay, development standards. I'll just buzz through these fairly quickly as well. Development standards include setbacks, separations, heights, aesthetics. So going back to the idea of data centers, it really feels like we want to treat data centers as much as possible and get them to be as like other industrial buildings. So do we just start out from the standpoint of treating them like every other industrial building and just say, okay, our setbacks are the same, but you have other things coming in play? Or do we want to have development standards that are very specific to data centers and say, okay, ignore the 50-foot setbacks that are in IPM, we're going to have you have automatically 250 foot. Just carte blanche, your data center, you have this. The difference being, if we treat them like just any other industrial building, we put a lot more emphasis on performance standards, which means a much weightier individual review, making sure those performance standards are all met. Potentially you have greater setbacks because of the performance standards. Potentially you actually have lesser setbacks because they use technology to meet performance standards. So they actually use technology to mitigate the noise rather than the distance, for example.
I think I have third, he talked about the precast concrete walls being a
Yes.
good noise notification. And they use some sort of score for that maybe, to where you don't just put, you have to use this technology that a new one might be better. Was there some sort of, something he said that?
Yeah, there was a rating
Some sort of a rating or
rating
something.
to the concrete walls, foam concrete walls that he had.
Yeah, I forget what it was, but something
That
like
sounds
that.
correct.
Or that.
Yeah.
Could be.
And that would feed into a noise standard then. You know, our threshold is this, how you meet that threshold, whether it be by distance, concrete walls, specialized fans, landscape screening, walls, otherwise, and so on. Let's see. Okay, so back to the idea of additional setbacks. If we just have a standard setback for data centers, it'd be uniform at least, a little bit easier to administer because of that. But again, you're perhaps discouraging someone from utilizing technology that might otherwise reduce and better mitigate. You're also potentially encouraging additional use of land. So what could be done with technology on a smaller footprint is obligated to be on a bigger footprint. And again, with the concepts, the comments about ag land loss, and that's a constant comment that we always have to keep in mind. That may be something that we want to watch too. But on the other end, this is all industrial areas, likely industrial areas, so you also have to balance that. Finally, separations. I expect to have separations in here, particularly from residential property lines, schools, and so on. And I will say that that may be not a sliding scale, but that may be basically performance-based rather than just simply a distance. So rather than simply saying you have to be 500 feet from a home or 750 feet from a home or a residential property line, that may be some distance, but then also have, say, noise standard attached to that. So anybody have any thoughts on any of that stuff?
One thing they did mention in the video as far as noise is concerned is that they highly recommended it be measured at the generating property line as opposed to the receiving property line.
Yes.
And some of those setbacks, and please correct me if I'm wrong, like he was talking in an industrial area, you can have the setbacks and the screening and all that stuff be different if it's bordering another IPM. Like if it's in IPM, the setback and zoning regulations can be different on that property line that abuts another IPM, where if it's ag on the north property line, those could still be larger than what the ones would be next to another IPM. So,
thank you. Yes, and that goes back to the idea of, again, trying to say, if we plunk a data center in the middle of one of our industrial parks, Park 30 or whatever, surrounded by existing businesses, well, those effects are going to be quite a bit different than if you plunked it down next to Deer Chase, for example. So, so that too will be part of the thinking, and these separations will reflect that. Aesthetics, just initial thoughts. How much do we want to regulate the building appearance with these standards? We don't regulate any building appearance whatsoever for any industrial anywhere right now. So if we started with this, great. But it could be used as a precedent. It could set the precedent for other industrial regulations, which is fine if you want to do that. But I'm telling you that we don't do that now. I do think that material, as Mark mentioned, really could be a part of that aesthetic component, but it's more for, say, noise mitigation than actual appearance sake. So, but on that same token, does anybody want to go down that road of aesthetics, say even for being next to or near residential, or let other factors play into it? Not hearing anything. I'm going to. Yeah. We'll back burner that one. See what it comes back to. Okay. So that's given me some ideas on those performance standards. This is not going to be the last time we talk about these. This is first time, kind of again, first blush. So, and I'm not going to talk about all of these, especially since it's 8:45 now. Noise, though, top one. Noise primarily comes from a few different sources, but two major ones. It's your cooling fans. Depending on whatever type of cooling is being used, there are fans. Not always, almost always fans. And then generators are also the other major source of noise. Typically backup generators. However, some places are moving towards on-site generation, which is great because it removes you from the grid, removes that performance effect, but you have always running generator noise as opposed to backup generators, which only run for a few hours when you have an outage. So those two different things. And I think when we start looking at noise, we may need to identify those separately, or at least be aware of how they impact the overall noise together. They're the one that I'm throwing in there are the server racks themselves. If you go inside a data center, it's really noisy because if you can hear this fan over here on the amplifier, take that times hundreds of thousands, and it's noisy. But if you have it in a building that is properly insulated, sound insulated, that noise doesn't get out. And it's primarily the other two that are the external noise generation. We can look at other noise sources and so on as well, of course, but those I think are the major ones that we'll have to look at. And the types that are involved can change things. Suggested standards, these are coming straight from both the webinar I sent out as well as a couple other places. And I don't think we're going to deviate too much from where we're headed with this. 45 to 50 dBA at a residential property line, again, being measured on the development side makes sense. Whether it's residential property line or any property line, that could be something we discuss. But again, it may not matter so much if you have industry next door, for example. DVC, this is something that we'll need to have a little bit more research on my side, but the standard would be basically making sure that at the property line you'd have pre-construction background levels of DVC, and making sure that you can get that measured before construction and then post-construction, so you ensure compliance there. So that's where I'm suggesting we're going, and again, I'm thinking you guys probably are all on the same boat with that one. So again, tell me if I'm wrong on that.
Don't tell him he's wrong on that.
Or don't. Okay, so on power usage, electricity usage specifically, power, who knows, maybe there's a water powered data center somewhere. So electricity though, 10 years ago, 50 megawatts was a very large data center. Now 150, 300 megawatt individual buildings, when you start looking at campuses, gigawatt, 2 gigawatt are not, they're not common yet, but they're not unheard of. Google in Fort Wayne is 1.2 gigawatt at full build out. Current plans, full build out, they do have options for additional land and additional buildings then. So the question though is this something that we want to regulate by zoning, and regulate in terms of classification is different than regulate as in you're limited to? Or do we just say classifications determine where you fall for these other standards, but the actual usage is going to be something that is thrown into the development agreement? Or there's a few other ways we require a power service letter, for example, something like that, which they have, or else they wouldn't be locating here. Do we do some other things, proximity, requiring proximity power lines, for example? Do we have a cap on power usage? Do you feel comfortable directly regulating the power usage, or do you want to say, yes, we want to regulate it, but in an indirect way, again, through development agreement or these other means?
How do we regulate by not, if we don't know what the power usage is right now? Because that's the thing I took from that webinar, is what they are using and then what these buildings are using, and you have to put both of them together. So we need to know what power usage in the county is now.
Okay.
And that, so you got a baseline to go from, and then we can go on up. Yeah, the 300 and on up, like they said in the webinar, in the next 5 years, they were looking at going at 14.3 gigawatts of growth. So I'm planning, all sorts of building and infrastructure upgrades.
That's all determined by the REMC, where they're getting it.
Yeah, that's part of it.
I mean, the only thing I would see us trying to protect would be that we're not paying to bring their electricity in and causing the rates to go up for the rest of us.
Can we regulate that they have to bring in new electricity and not take off of what we're using currently?
Then they'd have to be, then you'd be looking at generation on site.
Yeah, or somehow to AEB or something.
Right, I mean,
figuring out,
that they're responsible for bringing extra power in.
Yeah.
I think
By
I think that's what a lot of other communities are currently doing.
By regulating the electricity usage is going to be, basically, you're going to be regulating the size of the facility. If you regulate the electricity's usage.
No, you won't.
If you could say that this facility is 100 megawatts, that's it. If there's someone that wants to be 200 megawatts, you have to be this size. So by regulating, if we say you can only use 50 megawatts, that's the size that you're gonna have to go with. By utilizing setting the electricity usage is gonna set the size of the facility.
I don't know if we want to regulate.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying that's the option that you might have.
I don't think we even want to try that.
I'm just throwing that out there.
Right.
Is there any kind of power usage that triggers an inspection by the electric company or by IDEM or by DNR?
What do you mean by power usage? Like if there was a brownout or power spike?
No,
or?
I mean,
On-site generators will be governed by IDEM.
right.
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 They would either have a Title 5 or a face-off.
Okay.
So different air permits and how long they can run those generators and so forth, and whether it's natural gas or diesel. So.
They had something in that effect up there at Sharper's gravel pit because they ran 3-phase back to it, and they were supposed to, from what I understood, when they put that dredge unit in, they were supposed to use X amount of power per month. And when that switched to Keystone, Noble County RMC came to them, and Keystone just basically said that was with your previous owner. You know, that was not out with us. So, but they do that on a basis. So, or an anticipated use, I would say. But that's one of the examples that I know of.
I guess the question that I have is maybe more general. Is there anything from a data center perspective that would trigger an IDEM inspection? Do they have an environmental engineer? Did they have the one in Hampton?
There, any wastewater they'll have to have an industrial waste permit.
Right, right.
It's a city sewer or their own wastewater treatment.
Yep.
Yeah,
so IDEM would regulate that too.
All the generator engines would have to be EPA approved, I believe.
Right.
Where the EPA emissions, all of them, would have to be pre-approved before they're even, because they can't be built without it.
Yeah, and if you're using public water, of course, items involved with testing that. And potentially, if you're using groundwater, you might have testing and IDEM regulations on use of groundwater as well. But again, data center as a term isn't regulated.
Right.
It's the effects that go into it, which actually, honestly, that's why we're here. Are not data centers, it's the effects of data centers. So, I will, I think, Jack, you're kind of hitting on the idea if we directly regulate electricity usage and classify by megawatt usage, it's kind of a double regulation. Pick one. I think there's things that we can indirectly insert in here. The idea of proximity to power lines might be one of those. Reduce the cost to existing customers because you don't have the power company running transmission lines, for example. So, okay, this will definitely have to be something that we spend a bit more time on as well. Or we find other things equivalent, again, kind of back into it. Water usage. This is the last big one for tonight. Open loop water cooling systems, which are the pump and dump type, I'm calling it bad technology. It's obsolete technology. It's not something that is being done now, except in relatively rare instances. Water costs, for one, and those early centers that use that set a bad precedent. It's not technology for new proposals typically. You typically see closed loop water cooling systems, and water is used because, of course, absorbs a lot of heat, and it's cheap. Closed loop, compared to open loop, is extremely little water usage, but it still does use water, and relative to, say, residences, it uses a lot of water, because you still have to clean the system, you still have to flush the system. We live in Indiana, our water is hard no matter what you do to it, so you still have to clean scale out. You also have evaporative losses, system losses, and so on. So it still does use a fair amount of water, although far less than the open loop systems that are the ones that have set that bad precedent. Another type of cooling is just, as I mentioned, the one in Hammond uses what I'm calling air conditioning cooling. It's got a fancier term, but it's basically air conditioning. That has almost zero water usage because it's just like a home air conditioner. But just like your home air conditioner, it uses a lot of power for those compressors and so on. So you're trading off water usage for power usage. So that is one of those trade-offs that we'll have to evaluate and know the nuances between regulating for power and water and what those trade-offs might be. Trying to hopefully keep everybody's flexibility to do the right system for the type of project. Potable or reclaimed water usage, I think that's important for us to know, but I don't know if that's necessarily something that we want to directly regulate. Wastewater purification requirements. Most of the water will go as effluent to the wastewater treatments facility, with a caveat that a lot of technology is being developed for recapturing heat off of that effluent and using it as secondary heat sources for all sorts of stuff. I will also say that that may actually go the other direction as well. I mentioned reclaimed water. You may be using the waste byproduct of an adjacent industrial facility for your cooling water, so your input, your effect on the actual public water supply may be virtually nil if you've got an industry that's already dumping relatively clean water out as part of their process. So again, when we start looking at these regulations, knowing this technology is out there and not trying to pin one particular system down is going to be really cool, really important, because this technology is changing so rapidly. Any thoughts on this slide though? Not hearing that. I'll skip down to landscape and buffering. I actually have two images for this just because I thought it was fascinating. This is Loudoun County, Virginia, and this is what they've got in Loudoun County, Virginia at one point. It's interesting to me here because you have data centers, you have homes, you have apartments, single-family homes, you have apartments, you have a boulevard, you have warehouses, industrial facilities, beyond warehouses, all within about a half-mile square here. The distance between the single-family dwellings there on the lower left, and this data center here is about 425 feet. Now you do have buffering between that, and you have this highway and so on, but again, it's 425 feet. That's about 120,000 square foot data center, by the way. And then you have these, that's a co-location data center, and then this up here, you can see because of the size of the parking lot, those are more logistics, more just general industry. So again, Loudoun County, as I started looking at this, it's very interesting to see how many data centers they have for one, and how they've been put into these different positions. Those homes are not, I will tell you, those are not $250,000 homes. More like 1.1 million or so. So now, it is still Virginia. But also then, this street view, this is the data center that I pointed to on the right and those homes there on the left. And so this is what how they've been able to achieve that distance, that buffering. And again, the administrator from Loudoun County on the webinar did give some pointers. Hey, 500 feet is really kind of the max minimum that you really need to be looking between homes and data centers, just as a general rule. I think there might be some exceptions to that potentially, but I agree. And this is an illustration of this. It's 425 feet. You can't see the homes. Also gives you some idea about potential buffering. And they use this not only for data centers, but their industrial parks as well, which opens up the question that we might have. Do we want to apply these performance standards more broadly as we go forward? So that's what I have on the standards. You've given me feedback. I can proceed forward with another round with more questions, code writing, and so on. September 16th, this is the adjusted timeline that I've got for you. September 16th, that I think will be more questions, more give me feedback. I will have some sort of concept of an idea, some sort of outline of what I'm working for code. By then, October 21st, the October meeting, my goal is to have, I'm optimistic that we will have everything in place by then to say, okay, what are our final changes? How do we make this into a final code? I think we're all on the same page. It's just nailing down some of these concepts. And I think we can do that in the course of 2 more months. Importantly, any final revisions then would be made at that October meeting. We would make those, put them into a final public review draft, give the public at least 2 weeks, if not preferably 3 solid weeks, before a full public hearing on the final review draft in November. So basically the time between October and November, there wouldn't be any more drafting. It would be public review chew time. And then November would be public feedback, depending on what that feedback is, maybe go into December for final tweaks and so on. But again, I don't know what that would look like, but likely it would be a make final changes and then do a recommendation to the commissioners with whatever those final changes are at November. And I also do expect, because that would be the public hearing on this, probably to move it to a different venue, a larger venue than this building. I know we can accommodate up to 400 people in this building, but it's a little easier if we can have a bigger venue. So that's my working game plan. We'll see how things shape up over the next couple months. And if you don't mind, I'll just skip down to the last topic. Reminder, be here on the 31st. We got to have the formal public hearing on HEA 1001, talk about housing, and the other 3 jurisdictions will be here too, and we'll figure out what we're doing, what they can teach us, what we can teach them, and so on. I know there's some things that the county does that the city can learn from, and vice versa, and all of that will need to go to the state and satisfy the 1001 requirements. But it will be crucial that you have a quorum for the 31st. So.
Hey Nathan, I want to echo Joe. Thanks for putting that trip together to go up there and see that data center. It was very worth the trip, I thought, and the information you keep sending us, because when it first come out about data centers, the first thing is absolutely not. But if you start to dig into them a little bit, we have to figure out a way to try to regulate those things. So continue to send whatever information you have our way. I appreciate it.
Will do. I do have a shared directory that I've been dumping that stuff in, and at some point I'll send you guys a link just so you have everything in one place. But yeah, right now I'm just sending things out. as they come through. And I can't take credit for arranging that. That was actually Stacy who arranged that.
Nathan, I have a question about something that was mentioned on the webinar.
Yes.
Is Indiana a Dillon rule state?
Indiana is a home rule state primarily. However, there have been a lot of incursions. So on the map that was on the webinar, we were listed as a mixed state for that reason. But we're primarily home rule. But there are several pieces that the state has said, no, we hold this. So for those of you who haven't watched that yet, home rule states, the state law is set up such that the local jurisdictions can do something unless there's state law that says explicitly you can't do it. Dillon rule is the inverse of that. The local jurisdictions can only do whatever the state tells them they can do. So, do you have zoning authority? Yes or no, for example. Can you regulate data centers? Yes or no. So, in Dillon rule states, the state would say, here, local jurisdictions, you can regulate data centers. Home rule, like us, it's on us to figure out these regulations up to the point or to the extent that the state says, no, we'll take it over from here.
Periodically, when something's kind of controversial, the state will take it over. Like I think they did that with some sewer regulations.
Yeah, yeah, they've done that with cell towers, for example. They say it's a local regulation, but here are some constraints. You can't do this, this, or this, but beyond that, whatever.
So in theory, they could do that if we got a little bit too nitpicky with some of the regulations as far as the data centers are concerned.
I haven't heard talk of that, but in theory, yes.
Yes. Yeah. There's been talk of
that on anything, though,
right? I've heard them talk about it with solar.
So
mostly.
Solar's kind of bubbled up, and I think it's kind of tapered off a little bit. It really felt like the state was going to hand us a bunch of regulations on solar a couple years ago, but that hasn't quite happened yet. Data centers might be the same thing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, anything else from the Planning Commission or staff? Alrighty, we are adjourned.
Thank you.